The cold December air hit my face the moment I stepped out of Charlotte Douglas International Airport. My lungs filled with that familiar southern chill, a strange mix of nostalgia and dread settling deep in my chest. After 5 years working rescue operations in Alaska, I had almost forgotten how different the air felt here, softer, warmer, and yet standing there with my worn suitcase at my feet, I had never felt colder in my life. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I should have known better than to check it. Should have just hailed a cab, found a hotel, and spent Christmas Eve watching bad movies with room service. But hope is a stubborn thing. It clings to you even when every rational thought tells you to let go. The screen glowed in the darkness. Dad, Christmas is happier without you. Don't come. I read the words 3 times, each reading making them more real. Before I could process the first blow, another message appeared. This one from Mom. Find a cheap hotel. Your brother's wife doesn't want you here. Travelers rushed past me, arms full of gifts and faces bright with anticipation. Christmas music drifted from somewhere inside the terminal, some cheerful song about coming home for the holidays. Seriously, the irony was not lost on me. I had flown over 4,000 miles to come home, and home had just slammed the door in my face. My name is Anna Mercer. I am 30 years old, and for the past 5 years, I worked as an emergency rescue coordinator in the most remote regions of Alaska. I pulled survivors from avalanches. I organized evacuations during forest fires. I held dying men's hands in the back of helicopters, promising them they would see their families again. I looked death in the face more times than I could count, but nothing. Not the frozen nights, not the screaming winds, not the weight of lives in my hands. Nothing had prepared me for this kind of quiet, absolute rejection. I typed back 3 words. Understood. Merry Christmas. Then I turned off my phone. The thing about being the invisible child is that you learn to carry your pain in silence. You learned that your tears did not matter, that your voice would go unheard, that no matter how loud you screamed, the world kept spinning for everyone else. I learned that lesson young. The Mercer family had 3 children, but only 2 that counted. My older brother Ethan was the golden boy, charming, confident, the heir apparent to everything our parents had built. My younger brother Daniel was the baby coddled and protected, never expected to amount to much, but loved fiercely anyway. And then there was me, the middle child. The mistake, as my mother once called me during a fight, she thought I could not hear. The one who did everything right and still could not earn a place at the table. My family owned the Palmetto Crown Inn, one of the oldest and most prestigious hotels in Charleston, South Carolina. It stood in the heart of the historic district, a monument to Southern elegance and Mercer ambition. Growing up, I spent my summers working there, first as a housekeeper, then at the front desk, then in the accounting office. I loved that hotel. I knew every creaking floorboard, every hidden staircase, every ghost story the night staff whispered about. But loving something does not mean you get to keep it. 5 years ago, I left Charleston after the worst fight of my life. Ethan had been caught stealing from the hotel's operating fund nearly $200,000 funneled into his failed real estate ventures. When I presented the evidence to my parents, they turned on me. Not him, me. How dare you accuse your brother? You are just jealous. You have always been jealous. Maybe if you had his talent, you would not need to tear him down. That night, I packed a single bag and bought a one-way ticket to Anchorage. I took a job with a humanitarian rescue organization, pouring all my pain into saving strangers because my own family did not want to be saved. I sent money home every month, payments toward the hotel's mortgage that my parents begged for during a particularly bad year. I answered their calls when they needed something, and I waited for an apology that never came. Waited for them to see me, waited for something to change. 2 weeks ago, I received something unexpected, a notice of vacation time. For the first time in 5 years, I was being given 2 weeks off over Christmas. My supervisor practically forced me out the door, telling me I needed to rest, to reconnect with family, to remember why we do what we do. Family, she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. I texted my mother, "Mom, I will be home for Christmas." She responded with a heart emoji. Nothing else. I chose to read it as a welcome. I chose to believe that maybe after 5 years things could be different. Maybe Ethan had grown up. Maybe my parents had realized what they had lost. Maybe this could be the Christmas where everything finally made sense. Instead, I got 2 text messages and a closed door. I found a motel about 20 minutes from the airport, a tired-looking place with a neon sign that flickered every few seconds. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and old carpet, but it was cheap and it was empty, and it did not ask me any questions. I lay on the bed without undressing, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and tried to remember the last time I felt like I belonged somewhere. The memory that came was from when I was 8 years old, Christmas morning. I woke up before everyone else and crept downstairs to see the tree. The presents underneath were sorted into 3 piles, one for Ethan, one for Daniel, one for me. But my pile was the smallest. It was always the smallest. I sat there in my pajamas counting the boxes, and something inside me broke. Not all at once, just a little crack. The first of many. Now lying in that motel room, I felt those cracks spreading. But I also felt something else. Something harder, colder, more determined. I was done waiting, done hoping, done being the daughter who accepted crumbs and called them love. Before I left Alaska, I received a package from a lawyer in Anchorage, a thick envelope marked urgent that I shoved into my carry-on without opening. Now, with nothing else to do and nowhere else to go, I pulled it out. Inside was a stack of documents, legal papers, financial records, and a letter that began, "Dear Ms. Mercer, we regret to inform you that as guarantor of the primary loan secured against the Palmetto Crown Inn." I sat up slowly, my heart beginning to pound. I remembered signing papers 7 years ago. My parents needed my credit score, my income verification, my signature on a loan they swore was just a formality. Just to help the family, they said. Just until Ethan gets his business off the ground, you understand. I understood. I signed. And then I was pushed back into the shadows, never mentioned in family discussions, never consulted on business decisions, never treated as anything more than a convenient tool. But the documents in my hands told a different story. According to the fine print my parents clearly hoped I would never read, if the loan went into default, ownership of the property would transfer to the guarantor. The guarantor was me. The loan had defaulted 18 months ago. The Palmetto Crown Inn, the crown jewel of the Mercer family, recently appraised at just under $1 billion, legally belonged to me. My phone still turned off, sat on the nightstand. In the morning, I knew there would be missed calls, voicemails, text messages demanding that I come home after all, not because they missed me, but because they needed something, because they always needed something. I picked up the phone and turned it on. 7 missed calls from Dad, 3 texts from Mom, 2 calls from Ethan, and 1 voicemail from a number I did not recognize, the law office of the Mercer family's attorney. "Miss Mercer," the voice said tight with barely concealed panic, "there are urgent matters regarding the Palmetto Crown Inn. Please call me back. It is important." I set the phone down and looked at the documents spread across the bed. The hotel that had been my childhood home, the family that had thrown me away, the billion-dollar property that was, according to every legal document I could find, entirely mine. They told me Christmas was happier without me. They had no idea what was coming. Dawn crept through the thin motel curtains like an unwelcome guest, painting everything in shades of gray. I hadn't slept. I hadn't. The documents were still spread across the bed, and I read them so many times that I could recite entire paragraphs from memory. The legal language was dense, full of whereofs and heretofores, but the meaning was crystal clear. I was the sole legal owner of the Palmetto Crown Inn. My phone buzzed throughout the night with increasingly desperate messages. The first ones from Mom were soft, almost conciliatory. "Anna, yesterday was just a misunderstanding. Your sister-in-law is stressed. Do not take it personally. Come home. We can talk." The messages from Dad were shorter, more demanding. "Call me back. You are causing problems. The lawyer needs to speak with you. This is serious." And Ethan, dear golden Ethan, sent his own contribution to the family chorus. "Mom and Dad are really upset. Do not make this worse than it needs to be." I read each message with the detachment of someone examining specimens under a microscope. The pattern was so familiar, it was almost comforting. They only reached out when they needed something. They only called when there was a crisis. And they always found a way to make it my fault. But this time was different. This time I held all the cards. I showered dressed in the plainest clothes I had packed and drove into Charleston proper. The city was beautiful in the morning light, draped in Christmas decorations that made every street corner look like a postcard. Horse-drawn carriages carried tourists past historic mansions. Church bells rang in the distance. Everywhere I looked, people were celebrating families together, couples holding hands, children chasing each other through parks dusted with morning frost. I felt like a ghost moving through a world I no longer belonged to. My first stop was not home. It was not the hotel. It was the law office of Caroline Hayes, an estate attorney I found through a quick internet search the night before. Her reviews described her as thorough, incorruptible, and absolutely ruthless when protecting her clients' interests. She agreed to an emergency consultation when I explained the basics of my situation. Her office was in a converted Victorian house near the courthouse, all polished wood and leather-bound books. Caroline herself was in her early 40s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a handshake that meant business. "You said this was about the Palmetto Crown Inn," she said, as I sat down across from her desk. "That is quite a property to be discussing on Christmas morning." "It is quite a situation," I replied, sliding the stack of documents across her desk. She read in silence for nearly 20 minutes. I watched her expression shift from professional interest to confusion to barely suppressed shock. When she finally looked up, her eyes had changed. She was looking at me the way people look at someone who just discovered a winning lottery ticket in their coat pocket. "Anna," she said slowly, "you are not just a guarantor. According to these documents, when the loan defaulted 18 months ago, full ownership transferred to you automatically. There is an addendum here, Addendum C, that explicitly states the transfer is irrevocable without your written consent. I never consented to anything, which means the transfer stands." She spoke quietly. "The Palmetto Crown Inn was appraised 6 months ago at $986 million. You are the sole legal owner of a property worth nearly $1 billion. The words hung in the air between us. "Does my family know?" I asked. "They know something is wrong. The bank has been sending notices. Their attorney has been trying to refinance, restructure, and do anything to regain control. But they cannot, because they don't own anything anymore. You do." I thought about the texts. "Christmas is happier without you. Find a cheap hotel." The casual cruelty of it. The absolute certainty that I would never fight back, that I would accept my banishment quietly, that I would fade away like I had always faded away. "There is more," Caroline continued, her voice dropping. "I looked at some of the supplementary documents. Your brother Ethan has been signing papers using your name. Some of these signatures," she pointed to several lines, "these do not match your actual signature at all. They are forgeries." The room felt very still. What does that mean practically? It means they didn't just use you as a financial safety net without your knowledge. They broke the law. Multiple counts of it. She met my eyes. "If you wanted to pursue this, you could." I sat with that for a long moment. The weight of it. The power of it. For 30 years I was nothing to them, a convenience, an afterthought, a problem to be managed. And now I held their fate in my hands. "I don't want to destroy them," I said finally. "I just want the truth." Caroline nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure you get it. But first you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with." She picked up her phone and made a call. When she hung up, she looked at me with something like respect. "I called Nathan Cole. He's your family's attorney. He has been trying to reach you. I think it is time you found out exactly what your family is so desperate to hide." My phone buzzed again. "Dad." I let it ring. "One more thing," Caroline said. "Before we meet with anyone, I want you to see the hotel. If you're going to make decisions about its future, you need to know what condition it is in." 2 hours later, I stood in the lobby of the Palmetto Crown Inn for the first time in 5 years. The grand foyer, with its gleaming wood and antique Persian rugs, still caught the light in exactly the way I remembered, but something was different. The place felt tired. Paint was peeling in corners I once kept spotless. The brass fixtures were tarnished. Staff moved through the space with the exhausted efficiency of people who had stopped caring. An older man in a maintenance uniform recognized me almost immediately. Samuel, I remembered. He had worked here longer than I had been alive. "Miss Anna," his voice cracked with surprise. They said you weren't coming." "I wasn't supposed to," I said quietly. "But plans change." He glanced around nervously. "Things have been bad, miss. Real bad. The new management—" He stopped himself, looking afraid. "It is okay, Samuel. You can tell me." "Occupancy is down 40%. We haven't been paid on time in 6 months. Mr. Ethan—" He shook his head. "He doesn't know what he's doing. Forgive me for saying so, but someone needed to say it a long time ago." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the lobby. "What the hell are you doing here?" I turned to find Ethan striding toward me, his face flushed with anger. Behind him, a group of well-dressed investors had stopped mid-tour, watching the scene unfold with undisguised curiosity. "Hello, Ethan," I said calmly. "Merry Christmas." "You can't be here. You weren't invited." "Actually," Caroline stepped forward, her voice carrying across the polished floor. "She can be anywhere she wants to be. She owns this hotel." The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan's face went from red to white. The investors exchanged confused glances, and somewhere behind the front desk I heard someone gasp. My brother's voice came out as barely a whisper. "That's not possible." "I have the documents that say otherwise." I kept my voice steady, even as my heart pounded in my chest. "You should have read the fine print, Ethan. You should have told me the truth. But you didn't. And now here we are." He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a side corridor. "We need to talk. Privately." I pulled free. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say right here." "You don't understand what you're doing," he hissed. "You're going to destroy everything. This hotel, this family destroyed itself a long time ago." I met his eyes without flinching. "I'm just finally seeing the wreckage clearly." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. "Anna, we need to talk. Please." I looked at the message, then at my brother's panicked face, then at the hotel that had shaped my entire childhood. The hotel they had stolen from me. The hotel that was finally legally, rightfully mine. "Tell them I'll be in touch," I said, "when I'm ready. Not before." Then I turned and walked out into the Charleston sunlight, leaving Ethan standing in the lobby of the empire he had just lost. The drive back to Caroline's office felt like moving through a dream. The streets of Charleston rolled past my window, familiar and foreign at the same time. I recognized every corner, every shop, every ancient oak tree draped with Spanish moss. But the girl who had walked these streets, the girl who had believed that if she just tried hard enough, her family would love her, that girl felt like a stranger now. Caroline was on the phone when I arrived, her voice sharp and professional. She waved me to a seat and finished her call with a curt, "We will be in touch." "That was Nathan Cole," she said, setting down the receiver. "Your family's attorney. He wants to meet, today." "And what does he want to discuss?" "He didn't say directly, but I can guess. They want you to sign over your ownership rights. Return the hotel to your parents. Pretend none of this ever happened." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that surprised even me. "Of course they do." "Anna, I need you to understand something before we go any further." Caroline's voice was serious. "Your family has been operating this hotel for the past 18 months without any legal right. They've been signing contracts, taking loans, making decisions, all while technically trespassing on your property. The liability here is enormous." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they are desperate. Without you signing over your rights, they could face criminal charges, fraud, forgery, possibly even embezzlement. You have all the power here. The question is what you want to do with it." I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was going about its Christmas Day business, families gathering for dinner, children playing with new toys, couples strolling hand in hand. Normal people living normal lives. It seemed impossible that I had ever been part of that world. "Do you know why I left Charleston?" I asked without turning around. "You mentioned a family disagreement." A disagreement. I tasted the word. That is one way to put it. I turned to face her. When I was 23, I found evidence that my brother was stealing from the hotel, nearly $200,000. I brought it to my parents with everything documented: bank statements, transfer records, receipts. I thought they would be grateful. I thought I was protecting the family business. What happened? They told me I was jealous, that I had always been jealous of Ethan, that I was trying to tear him down because I couldn't stand to see him succeed. My voice remained steady, but I felt old wounds reopening. My mother said, if you had any real value, you would not need to destroy your brother. My father told me to leave and not come back until I was ready to apologize. Caroline was silent for a long moment. And you never came back? Not until now. I sat back down. For 5 years I've been sending money home. Payments on the mortgage they begged me to help with, every month without fail. And every month not a single thank you. Not a single acknowledgement, just more requests when they needed something else. Are the payments documented? All of them, bank transfers. I have records of every single one. Caroline made a note. That's good. It shows they accepted help from you while simultaneously excluding you from any knowledge of the business situation. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. 7 more missed calls. A voicemail from an unknown number. Text messages piling up like autumn leaves. They're getting desperate, Caroline observed. Good. The word came out harder than I intended. Let them feel what it is like to be ignored. But even as I said it, I felt the familiar ache of wanting to be wanted. That 8-year-old girl counting her pile of presents was still somewhere inside me, still hoping that this would be the year they noticed her, still hoping that love could be earned through patience and sacrifice and quiet endurance. Caroline seemed to sense the conflict. Anna, whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. But you need to understand that once we start down this road, there's no going back. If we meet with their attorney, if we start negotiating, your family will know exactly what you know, and they will do everything in their power to get that hotel back. I'm not afraid of them. Maybe not. But are you prepared to fight them? Really fight them, because this won't be clean, it won't be quick, and it will almost certainly destroy whatever relationship you have left. I thought about the relationship I had left. The texts that said Christmas was happier without me. The years of being made to feel invisible, worthless, less than. The way my father never looked at me, the way he looked at Ethan, with pride, with hope, with recognition of shared blood. There is no relationship, I said finally. There hasn't been for a long time. They just never noticed. Caroline nodded slowly. Then let me show you something. She pulled up financial records on her computer documents she had obtained from public filings and her own investigations. As she scrolled through them, my understanding of the situation shifted and deepened. The hotel wasn't just struggling. It was hemorrhaging money. Occupancy rates had plummeted. Major contracts had been lost. Ethan signed a disastrous deal with a management company that was now suing for breach of contract. And beneath all of it, hidden in line items and footnotes, were payments to shell companies that seemed to have no legitimate business purpose. Where did this money go? I asked, pointing to a series of transfers. That's what I intend to find out. Caroline's expression was grim. But if I had to guess, someone has been siphoning funds out of the hotel for years, and given who had access to the accounts, Ethan, possibly, or your parents, or all of them together. She met my eyes. Anna, this isn't just about ownership anymore. This is about a pattern of deep financial misconduct. If we dig deeper, and I think we need to, we may find things that cannot be undone. I sat with that weight for a long moment. The hotel I had loved, the family I had tried so hard to please, the truth that was even uglier than I had imagined. Then we dig, I said. I want to know everything. Caroline picked up her phone. I'll call Nathan back. Tell him we'll meet tomorrow morning. Neutral ground the conference room at the Marriott downtown. She paused. Are you sure you're ready for this? I looked at my phone, still dark with unread messages from people who had spent my entire life making me feel small. Then I looked out the window at the city that had been my home, the city I had fled, the city I was about to reclaim. "I've been ready for 30 years, I said. They just never bothered to ask. The Marriott conference room was aggressively neutral beige walls, generic art, a long table surrounded by leather chairs. It could have been any corporate meeting room in any city in America, but the tension in the air was anything but ordinary. I arrived first deliberately. I wanted to be the one watching them walk in. I wanted to see their faces when they realized I was not the same girl who fled Charleston 5 years ago. Caroline sat beside me, her legal pad already filled with notes, her expression calm and professional. My family arrived together, a united front that would have been touching if it were not so clearly orchestrated. My father walked in first, his face set in the stern expression I remembered from every lecture, every disappointment, every moment he had looked through me like I was not there. My mother followed, clutching his arm, her eyes red-rimmed and her posture suggesting fragility. Ethan brought up the rear, his suit expensive, and his smile completely absent. Nathan Cole, their attorney, made introductions as if we were strangers meeting for the first time. Perhaps in a way we were. "Anna," my father began before anyone could sit down, "this has gone far enough. You need to sign the papers and end this foolishness." I gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit." He bristled at being directed in what he clearly still considered his meeting. But he sat. They all did. "Before we discuss anything," Caroline said, "I want to establish some facts. My client is the sole legal owner of the Palmetto Crown Inn. This ownership transferred 18 months ago per the terms of the loan agreement. There is no legal dispute about this. Is that understood?" Nathan Cole shifted uncomfortably. "The family is prepared to dispute." "There is nothing to dispute," Caroline cut him off. "The documents are clear. Your clients defaulted on the loan. Ownership transferred to the guarantor. Any attempt to challenge this in court would fail and would only generate additional legal fees for your clients. Fees they cannot afford given the current financial state of the property." My mother spoke for the first time. "Anna, please. You are our daughter. You cannot do this to your own family." The words hit exactly the way they were designed, to straight to the guilt, straight to the obligation, straight to the part of me that had spent 30 years trying to earn their love. But this time, I was ready. "Why did you use my name on the loan?" I asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "The loan that gave you access to millions of dollars. The loan that kept the hotel running for years. Why did you put my name on it instead of Ethan's, instead of your own?" My father's jaw tightened. "Your credit was better. It was a practical decision." My credit was better because I lived within my means, while Ethan was bankrupting his real estate ventures with hotel money. I kept my voice steady. "Did you know that at the time? Did you know he was stealing?" "He was not stealing," my mother said quickly. "He was investing. There is a difference." "Show me the returns on those investments." I turned to Nathan Cole. "You must have records. Show me the profits that justified diverting $200,000 from the hotel's operating fund." The silence was enough. "Anna?" Ethan finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You don't understand the business world. Sometimes investments take time to mature. Sometimes there are temporary setbacks. You can't judge—" "You lost everything," I said flatly. "Every penny you took, and then you came back for more. And when I tried to stop you, you had our parents throw me out of the family." "We never threw you out," my mother protested. "Leave, and do not come back until you are ready to apologize." I quoted my father's words exactly. "Those were your exact words, Dad. December 14th, 2019. I remember because I spent that Christmas alone in a motel in Alaska, wondering what I had done wrong." My father's face flushed. "You accused your brother of being a thief." "He was a thief. He is a thief." I pulled out a folder Caroline had prepared and slid it across the table. "These are bank records, transfer receipts, contracts signed with my forged signature. This isn't an accusation anymore, Dad. This is evidence." Nathan Cole reached for the folder, but my father got there first. As he flipped through the pages, I watched the color drain from his face. "Where did you get these They are public records, Caroline said, available to anyone who knows where to look. And now that my client is the legal owner of the property, she has access to the complete financial history. My mother is crying now. Anna, please. Whatever happened in the past, we are still your family. You can't destroy us like this. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. The words came out tired rather than triumphant. I just want the truth. I want to understand why you lied to me. Why did you use me? Why did you make me feel like nothing for 30 years while you gave everything to a son who was robbing you blind? We never... Yes, you did. I cut her off, and for once she stopped talking. Every Christmas when my presents were the smallest. Every dinner where my opinions didn't matter. Every time you told me that Ethan was the future of this family and I was just here. Background noise, someone to clean up after the people who mattered. The room was very quiet. I didn't come back here for revenge, I continued. I came back because for one stupid moment I thought things might be different. I thought maybe 5 years was long enough for people to change, but the first thing you did was tell me not to come home. That Christmas was happier without me. I looked at my father. You texted that, on Christmas Eve, while I was standing in an airport 4,000 miles from home, hoping this year would be different. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look ashamed. He just sat there with his jaw clenched, trapped by truths he couldn't deny. What do you want? Ethan asked finally. Money. Is that what this is about? You want us to pay you off. I want you to resign. The words came out clear and certain. All of you. Immediately. You've been running my hotel illegally for 18 months. That ends today. Your hotel. My father stood up quickly, his face red with rage. I built that hotel. My father built that hotel. You think you can just... Mr. Mercer. Nathan Cole's voice was carefully calm. Please sit down. I will not sit down. This is our family's legacy, and she thinks she can just take it because of some technicality. It is not a technicality, Caroline said. It is the law. And if you continue to deny your daughter's legal rights, we will pursue every available remedy. Oh, including criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and financial manipulation. My mother gasped. Ethan went pale. My father stood frozen, his fist clenched around the folder of evidence. I don't want to send anyone to prison, I said quietly, but I will if that is what it takes to make you see the truth. You don't get to hurt me anymore. You don't get to use me anymore. And you definitely don't get to run my hotel into the ground while pretending I don't exist. I stood and gathered my things. You have 24 hours to clear out your offices. After that, the new management takes over. Anna. My mother reached for my hand. I stepped back. You had 30 years to reach for me. You never did. I walked toward the door, then paused. Merry Christmas, Mom. I hope I will be happy. Like you said it would be without me. I left them there, my father speechless with rage, my mother sobbing, my brother looking like his world had ended, which in a way it had. In the elevator, I finally let myself breathe. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I also felt something I had not felt in years. I felt seen. The next 72 hours were a blur of legal documents, phone calls, and carefully choreographed maneuvers. My family didn't go quietly. They hired additional attorneys. They filed emergency motions. They called in every favor they had accumulated over decades of Charleston social climbing. But Caroline had been right. The law was on my side, and every attempt they made to challenge my ownership only highlighted the strength of my position. On the third day, I received an unexpected visitor at my motel room. I opened the door to find a man in his early 40s, well-dressed, but not ostentatiously so, with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having nothing to prove. Anna Mercer. He extended his hand. I'm Parker Sterling. I believe we have some things to discuss. The name triggered a distant memory headlines about hotel acquisitions profiles in business magazines, rumors of a hospitality empire that stretched across 3 continents. Mr. Sterling, I know who you are. I did not take his hand. I also know you were touring my hotel with my brother 2 days ago. I was considering an acquisition. he admitted. Your brother presented himself as having authority to sell. Imagine my surprise when I discovered he didn't actually own anything. Is that why you're here to make me an offer? Actually, no. He smiled slightly. I'm here because I've been following your situation with considerable interest. A woman who spent 5 years in humanitarian rescue work, who just discovered she owns a billion-dollar property, who is standing up to a family that has clearly wronged her. That is not someone who wants to sell and walk away. That is someone who wants to build something. I studied him carefully. In my experience, people who showed up uninvited usually wanted something. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership. He pulled out a business card. The Palmetto Crown Inn is a remarkable property with a remarkable history, but it has been badly mismanaged for years. The infrastructure is failing. The reputation is damaged. Turning it around will require capital expertise and a clear vision for the future. And you are offering those things. I am offering a minority stake, 49% to your 51%. You maintain control. You make the final decisions. Sterling Resorts provides the resources and operational support to bring the hotel back to what it should be. He met my eyes directly. You stay in charge, your name on the door, your vision for the future. It was, I had to admit, exactly the kind of offer I would need if I was serious about keeping the hotel rather than selling it. The financial records Caroline had shown me made it clear that the property needed significant investment just to stay operational, investment I did not have access to on my own. Why? I asked. You could wait for me to fail and pick up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. Why offer a fair deal now? Parker considered the question. Because I have seen what happens when properties like this fall into the wrong hands. They get stripped down, sold off, turned into something generic and soulless. The Palmetto Crown Inn deserves better than that. And because sometimes the best investments are not the most profitable ones. Sometimes they are the ones that create something worth having. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Caroline's number. I need to take this, I said. Of course. Parker stood. Think about what I've said. When you are ready to talk terms, you know how to reach me. He left, and I answered the phone to Caroline's urgent voice. Anna, we have a problem. Your brother just called an emergency board meeting. He's claiming there are procedural irregularities in the ownership transfer. It's a stalling tactic, but it could tie things up for weeks. Can he actually do that? He can try. It will fail, but it will cost time and money. And there's something else. She hesitated. We've been digging into those shell company payments I mentioned. Anna, it's worse than we thought. Significantly worse. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my brief moment of optimism fading. Tell me. Over the past 5 years, nearly $8 million has been funneled out of the hotel through fake vendor contracts and shell corporations. The money trail leads to accounts controlled by your brother, but some of it, a significant portion, went to accounts in your parents' names as well. The room seemed to tilt slightly. $8 million. Not just Ethan's failed investments, not just bad management, systematic theft perpetrated by my entire family. They're all in on it, I said slowly. It appears so. And Anna... Caroline's voice softened. Some of the transfers were authorized using your name, your forged signature. If this goes to court, they will try to claim you were complicit. I was in Alaska. I haven't been near the hotel's finances in 5 years. I know, we can prove that, but it is going to be a fight. She paused. Are you still sure you want to pursue this? I thought about Parker Sterling's offer, about the hotel I had loved since childhood, about the family that had used me as a shield for their crimes while making me feel worthless. More sure than ever, I said. Find everything. I want to know exactly what they did when they did it and how they tried to cover it up, and then we're going to make sure they can never do it to anyone else again. I hung up the phone and looked at Parker Sterling's business card. It sat there on the motel nightstand like a promise or a threat, depending on how things played out. My family spent 30 years teaching me that I was nothing, that I didn't matter, that my voice would never be heard. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The emergency board meeting was held in the hotel's executive conference room, a space I remembered well from the rare occasions when my father allowed me to sit in on family discussions. Usually I was there to take notes, fetch coffee, or provide whatever administrative support was needed. Never to speak, never to decide. Today was different. I walked in with Caroline on one side and Parker Sterling on the other. The choice to bring Parker was strategic. His presence signaled that I had serious backing, that I was not just a disgruntled daughter making empty threats. The hotel staff who lined the hallways watched us pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to hope. Word had spread about the ownership change, and I felt the shift in atmosphere. Something was coming. Everyone knew it. My family was already seated when we entered. My father sat at the head of the table, a position he claimed by habit rather than right. My mother sat beside him, her face carefully composed. Ethan occupied his usual spot to their right, a stack of legal papers in front of him. "This meeting is for board members only," Ethan said as we entered. "Mr. Sterling has no standing here." "Actually," Caroline said smoothly, "there is no board. The Palmetto Crown Inn has been operating under a corporate structure that was voided 18 months ago when ownership transferred to my client. Any board appointments made since then are legally null." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That is ridiculous. We have been running this hotel without legal authority," I finished. "I know. That is what we are here to fix." I took a seat, deliberately choosing the center of the long table. A statement of intent. "Yesterday, I received a full accounting of the hotel's financial status," I began. "Over the past 5 years, this property has lost 40% of its value. Occupancy rates are at historic lows. Staff morale is destroyed. And $8 million has disappeared into shell companies controlled by various members of this family." "Those are investments," my father said. "Long-term strategic. They are theft." I pulled out a folder of documentation. I have the paper trail. I have the account numbers. I have copies of contracts that never resulted in any actual services being provided. And I have evidence that my signature was forged on multiple occasions to authorize these transfers. My mother's face had gone pale. "Anna, you don't understand the pressures we were under. The economy, the competition. I understand perfectly." I kept my voice level. "You stole from your own business. You used my name to do it. And when I tried to stop it 5 years ago, you threw me out of the family rather than face the truth." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken accusations and mounting fear. For the first time in my life, I saw my father look uncertain. My mother's carefully maintained composure was cracking. Ethan's arrogance had given way to something closer to panic. "What do you want?" my father asked finally. "I want what should have been mine all along, control of my own property, transparency in all financial matters, and your complete resignation from any operational role in this hotel." I met his eyes directly. "You can keep whatever money you have already stolen. Consider it your severance, but as of today, the Mercer family no longer runs the Palmetto Crown Inn." "You cannot do this," Ethan snarled. "This hotel is our legacy, our heritage. You are nothing but a—" Choose your next words very carefully. Parker Sterling spoke for the first time, his voice quiet, but carrying a weight that made Ethan stop mid-sentence. "Miss Mercer is showing remarkable restraint. The evidence she has could put all of you in prison. Instead, she is offering you a graceful exit. I strongly suggest you take it." Ethan looked like he wanted to throw something. My father's hands were clenched into fists. My mother had started crying again, real tears, or strategic tears. I could no longer tell the difference. "You can't expect us to just walk away," my mother whispered. "I expect exactly what you always expected from me," I replied. "Complete compliance without question, acceptance of whatever crumbs are offered, gratitude for being allowed to exist at all." I stood. "The difference is, I'm not cutting you out of my life. I'm just cutting you out of my business. You can still be my family if you want to be, but you can't be my problem anymore." I rose from the chair, gathering my folders with a snap. "You have until the end of the week to clear out your offices. After that, we change the locks. And if any of you try to interfere with the hotel's operations in any way, Then we had a very different conversation, one that involves lawyers and judges and possibly prison cells. I left them there, surrounded by the evidence of their own crimes, facing a future where they were no longer in control. In the hallway, the hotel staff had gathered. They heard everything. The conference room doors had been left open deliberately. Word would spread, the truth would come out, and for the first time in years, the people who worked here would know that someone was fighting for them. Samuel, the old maintenance worker, approached me with tears in his eyes. "Miss Anna," he said, "we always knew you were different from them. We always knew." I took his hand. "Things are going to be different now. I promise." And for the first time since I landed in Charleston, I actually believed it. The morning I officially took control of the Palmetto Crown Inn, the sun rose over Charleston in shades of gold and amber. It felt like an omen, though whether good or bad I couldn't yet say. I stood in what had been my father's office, now stripped of his personal effects. The desk was clear except for a single folder, a 90-day plan I developed with Caroline and Parker's team. It was ambitious, aggressive, and necessary. The hotel was bleeding money and hemorrhaging staff. Without dramatic intervention, even my ownership would be worthless within the year. At 8 in the morning, I called my first all-staff meeting. They gathered in the main ballroom, housekeepers and concierges, chefs and accountants, security guards and maintenance workers. Nearly 200 people whose livelihoods depended on what happened next. I saw the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. They had seen ownership changes before, and they knew what usually came next. Layoffs, budget cuts, the slow dismantling of everything they had built. I stood at the front of the room, without a podium, without notes, without anything to hide behind. "I know many of you remember me," I began. "I used to work here. I cleaned rooms and answered phones and learned every inch of this building from the ground up. And I know that the past few years have been hard. You were asked to do more with less. You were treated like expenses rather than assets. You watched this hotel decline while the people in charge refused to listen." I paused, looking out at the faces before me. "That ends today." I outlined the 90-day plan: immediate infrastructure repairs, a complete audit of all departments, a new compensation structure that would tie bonuses to performance rather than politics. I announced that everyone would be paid on time going forward, that unpaid overtime would be compensated, that the skeleton crew staffing that had been wearing people down would be addressed with new hires. "I can't promise everything will be easy," I said. "Turning this hotel around will take time and effort from all of us, but I can promise that your voices will be heard, that your work will be valued, that you will be treated with the dignity you deserve." When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then someone started clapping Samuel, the old maintenance worker. Others joined in. Within moments, the entire room was applauding, some people crying, some laughing, all of them finally allowing themselves to hope. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. All those hopes, all those expectations now resting on my shoulders. If I failed, I wouldn't just lose a hotel. I would destroy the dreams of 200 people who had trusted me. I couldn't afford to fail. The first week was a blur of activity. Inspectors came and went, documenting everything from frayed electrical wiring to outdated kitchen equipment. The legal team finalized the paperwork for Parker Sterling's investment, giving us the capital we needed to begin serious repairs. And slowly, tentatively, guests began to return. But the family was not finished with me yet. On the 5th day, I received an email from my brother, a mass message sent to every hotel employee claiming that I had illegally seized the property and would soon be removed. The allegations were false and easily disproven, but the damage was done. Staff who had been starting to trust me were suddenly uncertain again. The local newspaper called, asking for comment. A vendor who had agreed to extend us credit called to cancel the arrangement. "He's trying to undermine operations," Caroline said when I showed her the message. Classic intentional disruption. Make enough noise, create enough doubt, and maybe the whole thing falls apart. Can we stop him? We can sue for defamation. We can issue counterstatements. But honestly, the best response is success. Prove him wrong by making the hotel work. So that is what I did. I worked 18-hour days. I met with every department head, every vendor, every community partner who had a stake in the hotel's success. I answered questions, honestly admitted mistakes openly, and refused to make promises I couldn't keep. Slowly, the narrative began to shift. The local news ran a story about the hotel's renovation plans featuring interviews with longtime employees who spoke about how different things already felt. A travel blogger visited and wrote a glowing preview of the changes to come. Reservations ticked upward for the first time in months. And then on the 7th day, something unexpected happened. I was in my office reviewing construction bids when my assistant knocked on the door. "There is someone here to see you," she said. "He says his name is Daniel. He says he is your brother." I had almost forgotten about Daniel. The baby of the family, always coddled, never expected to amount to much. He had been notably absent from the confrontations of the past week, and I assumed he was simply following our parents' lead as he always had. "Send him in." Daniel walked through the door, looking nothing like I remembered. The cheerful, careless youngest child had been replaced by someone older, harder, with dark circles under his eyes and tension in every line of his body. "Anna," he said, "we need to talk." "I am listening." He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. "I know what Ethan has been doing, the emails, the phone calls, trying to destabilize the system with the staff. I know because—" He paused, struggling with something. "Because I've been helping him." I said nothing, waiting. "The power outage yesterday in the East Wing, the one that caused all those guests to complain, that was me. I still have access to the maintenance systems, and Ethan convinced me that if we caused enough problems, you would give up and leave." "And are you here to cause more problems?" "No, I'm here because I realized something. You are the only one in this family who ever actually cared about this place. Mom and Dad care about the money. Ethan cares about power. But you care about what the hotel could be. That is a convenient realization to have now that I am in charge." "Maybe." He did not flinch from my skepticism. "But it's also true. I watched you at that staff meeting. I saw how people responded to you, and I thought about how Mom and Dad treated you all those years, and I realized I was just as bad. I never stood up for you. I never said anything when they were cruel. I just went along with it because it was easier." "What do you want, Daniel?" "A job. A real job, not just a title. Let me prove I can be more than what they expected me to be. And I can tell you exactly what Ethan is planning next." I studied my youngest brother carefully. "You will work with the maintenance team. Not as a supervisor, you will have to earn that. But you will have access to the systems, and you will report directly to me about any irregularities you find. And Daniel, if you betray me, there will not be a second chance. This is it." He nodded, relief flooding his face. "I understand. I won't let you down." Daniel's confession opened doors I didn't even know existed. For the next 3 hours, he laid everything out, not just Ethan's internal sabotage, but years of financial secrets my family had buried so deep I wasn't supposed to ever find them. The shell companies weren't just about siphoning money. They were about hiding the real state of the family finances. My parents had been living beyond their means for decades, using the hotel like an ATM while keeping up the image of success. And when the walls started closing in, they reached for the only person they thought wouldn't fight back me. "They knew exactly what they were doing when they put your name on that loan," Daniel said. "Dad called it a safety net. If things went bad, you'd take the hit. He always thought you wouldn't push back. It hurt, but it didn't shock me. What came next did." "There's more," he said, tension tightening his voice. "About 6 months ago, Ethan started working with a lawyer from out of state. They've been putting together a plan to have you declared mentally unfit. They're claiming the rescue work in Alaska messed you up, that you're too unstable to manage a property this big." For a second, it felt like the room tilted. "Do they even have evidence?" I asked. "They're trying to manufacture it. Ethan's been telling people you had a breakdown up north, saying you've been off for years. And he found some doctor, no idea how legit, who's willing to sign off based on whatever story they feed him." I stepped to the window, staring down at the grounds I'd fought so hard to take back. This wasn't just greed. This was a coordinated attack on who I was. "Why tell me now?" I asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. Because it's wrong, and because I'm tired of pretending not to see what our family really is. You were the only one who ever treated me like more than the baby. You never made me feel small." He pulled something from his jacket, an old photograph of the two of us as kids on the hotel steps, both missing teeth, both so unaware of what was coming. "I found this in Dad's old things," he said, "back when things were still good. I figured you should have it." I looked at the picture for a long moment. Those kids deserved better than the adults they became. "Thank you," I said simply. After he left, I called Caroline and Parker into an emergency meeting. The mental fitness angle changed everything. We needed to be ahead of this before it hit a courtroom. The good news, Caroline said after reviewing Daniel's notes, is these cases rarely succeed. They'd need real doctors, documented patterns, witnesses. This is basically slander dressed up as strategy. But if they file Parker added, they'll stall operations. Investors get nervous. Staff gets anxious. You can't afford months of uncertainty. So we don't give them a window, I said. We accelerate the renovation schedule. We get public wins. We make it impossible for anyone to argue, "I'm not capable of running this place. That requires capital we don't have yet," Parker reminded. "Then we get it. Your minority stake, can we expand it?" He considered. 45%, non-voting shares. You keep full control. Done. What happened next barely felt real. With Sterling's investment accelerating everything, the hotel became a construction hive, workers on every floor, every wing, every hallway. New staff came in. Old staff stepped up. Marketing rolled out a full rebrand celebrating the hotel's history and its comeback. Meanwhile, Ethan kept pushing. Daniel passed me every text, every whispered plan, every desperate attempt to sabotage what we were building. But the momentum had already shifted. Vendors returned. The staff rallied. Guests noticed the changes. Then the Charleston Chronicle ran a front-page piece titled, "New Management Breathes Life into Historic Palmetto Crown Inn Photos. Interviews. Praise." That same night I got the text, "You think you have won. You have not. This is not over." I didn't answer, because whatever was coming, I was ready. What I didn't know was that the danger wasn't outside anymore. It was already inside the building waiting for the lights to go out. The call came at 3 a.m. I had fallen asleep at my desk, something that happened more often than I wanted to admit, and the ringing phone dragged me out of a dreamless darkness. "Miss Mercer, there has been an incident." The security officer's voice was tense. "Someone tried to access the main data center. We caught them on camera." I was at the security station within 10 minutes, still pulling on my jacket. The footage was grainy, but clear enough, a figure in dark clothing moving through the maintenance corridors with obvious familiarity. They knew exactly where the cameras were, exactly which doors to use, exactly how to navigate the building's hidden spaces. "Can you identify them?" I asked. "Not from this angle, but look at this." The security officer rewound the footage and zoomed in on the figure's hand. "That is a maintenance pass. Current issue. Someone on staff gave them access." Daniel. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. He had access. He knew the systems. Had his confession been part of the plan all along? Gain my trust, then strike when I wasn't expecting it. I pulled out my phone and called him. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. "Find him," I told the security officer, "and lock down the building. No one leaves until we know what happened." It took 2 hours to locate Daniel. He was in the basement, unconscious, with a bruise on his temple and his maintenance pass missing. When he finally came around, his story tumbled out in fragments. He had been checking on the data systems, part of his new responsibilities, when someone attacked him from behind. He hadn't seen who it was, but he heard a voice he recognized. "It was Dad," he said, his voice hollow with shock. "I heard him talking to someone else, giving directions." My father. Not Ethan. My father. Caroline arrived within the hour, and we pieced together what had happened. The intruder, we later identified him as a former employee who had been fired years ago for theft, had been hired by my father to sabotage the hotel's critical infrastructure, including the data center and key utility controls. If successful, the resulting system failure would have crippled the hotel's operations and destroyed the documentation of their financial crimes. He was willing to cripple his own legacy. I said, staring at the police report, "rather than let me have it." "The authorities are taking him into custody now," Caroline said gently. "Him and the man he hired. The charges are serious. Sabotage of critical infrastructure conspiracy, attempted destruction of property. He's looking at real prison time." I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt triumphant. But sitting in my office as the sun rose over Charleston, all I felt was tired and sad and empty. My phone rang. Ethan's number. "I know what he did," Ethan said before I could speak. His voice was shaking. "I swear to you, Anna, I didn't know he was planning this. I thought we were just fighting for the hotel. I didn't know he would have caused enormous damage," I said flatly. "If the entire utility system had gone down with guests in the building, I know. He was crying now. "And I'm sorry. For everything. For the money, for the lies, for all of it. I was so busy trying to prove I was better than you that I never saw what we were becoming." I let the silence stretch. There were no words for this, no reconciliation that could undo decades of damage. "What happens now?" Ethan asked finally. "Now you leave," I said. "You and Mom. You find somewhere else to be, somewhere far away from here, and you never contact me again." "Anna, this is not negotiable. Dad is going to prison. The hotel is moving forward without any of you, and I am finally done trying to earn love from people who never had any to give." I hung up before he could respond. There was nothing more to say. That afternoon I stood on the hotel's rooftop terrace and watched the Charleston skyline shimmer in the afternoon light. Daniel stood beside me, his head still bandaged, his expression a mix of guilt and hope. "I'm sorry I couldn't stop him," he said. "You tried. That is more than anyone else in this family ever did." I looked at my youngest brother, really looked at him, and saw something I recognized. The desire to be better than what you were raised to be. The hope that redemption was still possible. "Stay," I said. "Help me rebuild this place. Help me make it what it should always have been." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance." Below us, the hotel was coming back to life. Workers moved through the corridors, repairing damage and building something new. Guests laughed in the lobby, the smell of fresh paint mixed with the scent of the sea. After 30 years of doubt, I had finally found my own path. Now finally I was seeing myself. 3 months after taking control of the Palmetto Crown Inn, I stood in the grand ballroom and watched it transform for our reopening celebration. Heavy glass fixtures that had been dark for years now blazed with light. Fresh flowers filled every surface. Staff moved through the space with a confidence and pride I had never seen during my childhood here. It is remarkable. Parker Sterling appeared beside me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've never seen a turnaround this complete this fast." I accepted the glass, but did not drink. It wasn't me. It was the people who work here. All I did was give them permission to care again. That is the most valuable thing a leader can do. He raised his glass in a toast. "To the Palmetto Crown Inn. May it thrive for another 100 years." The evening unfolded like a dream. Local dignitaries mingled with travel industry leaders. Food critics raved about the restored kitchen's creations. A jazz quartet played standards that floated through the air like memories of a more elegant time. And everywhere I looked, I saw the faces of the people who had made this possible. Samuel, the old maintenance worker, dressed in a new suit and beaming with pride. Maria, the head housekeeper, who had kept things running through the worst of times. The front desk team who had greeted guests through crisis after crisis, always professional, always kind. Daniel found me near midnight when the party was winding down and the last guests were saying their goodnights. "Dad's sentencing hearing was today," he said quietly. 5 years. Sabotage of critical infrastructure and conspiracy. I nodded. I knew it was coming. I chose not to attend. There was nothing I could say to him that would change anything and nothing he could say that I needed to hear. "Mom and Ethan left for Florida this morning," Daniel continued. She sold the house. Apparently they are starting over. Good. The word came out neutral, neither bitter nor forgiving. Just final. I hope they find whatever they are looking for. Do you really? I thought about it honestly, about the parents who had dismissed me for decades, about the brother who had stolen my birthright, about the years of pain and doubt and loneliness. I really do, I said finally. I'm done being angry at them. I'm done needing them to see what they did wrong. I'm just done. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Is that forgiveness? No, it is freedom. I looked at my youngest brother, the one family member who had chosen a different path. Forgiveness would mean pretending they didn't hurt me. Freedom means accepting that they did and building something better anyway. The band started playing again, one last song for the night. Auld Lang Syne, even though it wasn't New Year's. Something about old acquaintances and cups of kindness, about the past that shaped us and the future we choose. I stepped out onto the terrace, letting the cool Charleston air wash over me. The hotel rose behind me, warm light spilling from every window. Below, the city sparkled with 1,000 stories, 1,000 lives, 1,000 possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart seized old fears rising up unbidden. But the message was not a threat. It was from a woman in Anchorage, a former colleague from my rescue work days. Anna, saw the news about your hotel. So proud of you. Always knew you were destined for great things. Sarah. I smiled, remembering the frozen nights and dangerous missions the lives saved and the ones we couldn't save. That work had shaped me in ways my family never had. It taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the choice to act despite it. The same courage that brought me back to Charleston. The same courage that let me face my family's demons. The same courage that would carry me forward into whatever came next. I typed back a response. Thank you. Finally found my way home. And for the first time in 30 years, I believed it was true. 1 year to the day after I received those devastating text messages at the airport, I stood in the lobby of the Palmetto Crown Inn and welcomed guests to our Christmas celebration. Not as an unwanted daughter, not as a dismissed sibling, but as the owner and CEO of one of the most celebrated boutique hotels on the Eastern Seaboard. The transformation was complete. Every room had been renovated, every system upgraded, every staff member trained to standards that exceeded anything the industry had seen. The Palmetto Crown Inn was not just surviving, it was thriving. Occupancy rates were at 93%. Reviews glowed with praise. Travel magazines had named us among the top 10 historic hotels in America. And through it all, I did what I set out to do. I built something that mattered, something that would last, something that proved once and for all that I was more than the invisible child my family had tried to make me. Miss Anna. Samuel appeared at my elbow, his face creased with a smile. There is someone asking for you at the front desk. She says she is an old friend. I made my way through the crowd of Christmas Eve guests, past the towering tree and the roaring fireplace, to where a woman stood waiting. It took me a moment to recognize her. The years had added gray to her hair and lines to her face, but when she turned and smiled, the memories came flooding back. Sarah. The name came out as barely a whisper. From Alaska. She pulled me into a hug. I had to see it for myself. Everything you've built here. She pulled back, her eyes shining. Anna, it is incredible. You are incredible. Yitai. We spent the next hour catching up in my office, trading stories about the years we spent apart. Sarah was still doing rescue work, still saving lives in the most impossible conditions. She followed the news of my hotel takeover with fascination, cheering from afar as I faced down my family and rebuilt the business they had nearly destroyed. I always knew you were tough, she said. But this taking on your whole family, turning around a failing business, becoming this... She shook her head. You are the bravest person I know. I am not brave, I said quietly. I was terrified. Every single day. I am still terrified. That is what makes you brave. She reached across the desk and took my hand. Courage is not about not being afraid. It is about being afraid and doing it anyway. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the Christmas party drifting up from below. Then Sarah asked the question I had been avoiding asking myself. "What about your family? Have you heard from them?" I looked out the window at the city lights. My mother calls sometimes. She never apologizes, never acknowledges what they did, but she calls. I think she is lonely in Florida. Ethan sends birthday cards, generic impersonal things that feel like obligation rather than affection. And Dad is still in prison. He has tried to contact me a few times, but I have not responded. Do you think you ever will? I don't know. I turned back to face her. I used to think I would know when I had healed, when I had moved past everything they did. But it is not like that. It is not a finish line you cross. It is more like learning to walk again after an injury. Some days are easier than others. Some days the old pain comes back, but you keep going, you keep building, you keep choosing to be better than what you came from. Sarah nodded slowly. And Daniel? That at least was a happier story. Daniel is still here. He runs the maintenance department now, actually runs it, not just holds the title. He is good at it. He cares. I smiled. He's also engaged. Nice woman from the accounting department. They are happy. And you, Sarah asked, are you happy? I considered the question carefully. Happiness had never been something I expected. For so long I had just been trying to survive. Survive my family, survive my own feelings of worthlessness. Survive the voice in my head that said I did not deserve anything better. But somewhere along the way, survival had become something more. I had found purpose. I had found a community. I had found a version of myself that I actually liked. I am getting there, I said finally. Every day a little more. Sarah stood and pulled me into another hug. That is all any of us can ask for. After she left, I stayed in my office for a long time watching the Christmas lights twinkle in the windows across the street. A year ago, I was standing in an airport reading a text message that told me I was not wanted. Now I was standing in a hotel I owned, surrounded by people who valued me, building a future I had never dared to imagine. The journey was not over. There would be more challenges, more setbacks, more moments when the old wounds reopened and the old doubts crept back in. But I had learned something important in the past year. It was enough. I had always had enough. The people who couldn't see that were not worth my pain. I gathered my jacket and headed back down to the party. There were guests to welcome, staff to thank, and a future to embrace. The Palmetto Crown Inn was open for business, and so was I. Christmas morning arrived quietly the way it always does when you stop expecting magic from the day. I woke before dawn in my apartment on the top floor of the hotel, a small space filled with books, a few plants I kept forgetting to water, and photos from the places that shaped me. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't grand, but it was mine, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. For a moment I rested there in the stillness, listening to the sounds below, soft voices from the early kitchen crew carts rolling across the lobby floors, the hum of a building waking up. A year ago, I woke up in a motel room that smelled like old carpet and stale cigarettes, wondering how I could feel so unwanted in the one place I had once called home. Now I woke up in a life I built on my own terms. I dressed, grabbed a sweater, and headed downstairs. The dining room was glowing with candles and holly, warm and ready for the Christmas breakfast we hosted each year. The staff greeted me with genuine smiles, not the forced politeness I'd grown up around. They handed me coffee before I even asked. Someone put a hand on my shoulder as they passed, just a silent Merry Christmas. It felt like family in a way my real family never had. Daniel found me near the kitchen doors, grinning in that lopsided way he used to when we were little. "Merry Christmas," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I have something for you." He handed me a small silver box. Inside was a framed copy of the childhood photo he'd found the two of us on the hotel steps, grinning with missing teeth and scraped knees. I figured, maybe it's time we remember the good parts too, he said softly. I held the picture for a long moment. That girl didn't know about betrayal or loneliness or fighting for a place at a table that was never meant for her. She didn't know she'd grow up feeling invisible, But she also didn't know she'd someday build a home stronger than the one she lost. "You were right," I told him. "We deserved better, and somehow we still found it." We hugged again, longer, steadier this time. Not out of obligation, but out of choice. Out of forgiveness we earned, not forgiveness forced. The rest of the day moved gently. Guests laughed in the dining room. Kids ran up and down the hallways in holiday pajamas. The staff exchanged small gifts. The hotel felt alive, like it was breathing again after years of being held underwater. In the afternoon, I walked the grounds alone. The winter sun sat low, lighting the gardens in that soft gold Charleston is known for. The fountains shimmered. The old oak tree stood steady in the corner, the same place I used to hide with books, just to feel unseen in a quieter way. I let myself remember everything, without flinching the texts that cut me open, the years of feeling like background noise the moment I realized I owned the very thing they tried to use against me. The hotel wasn't just mine on paper. It was mine in spirit, too. Reclaimed, restored, reborn. By sunset, I made my way back to the lobby. That's where I found Parker waiting with 2 cups of cider and a small wrapped package. "I figured you could use something warm," he said. I smiled. "You always show up right when things settle. That's my specialty," he said, handing me the gift. "Open it." Inside was a first edition of a book I loved as a kid, a story about a girl who fought longer and harder than anyone expected her to. "I remembered you mentioning it once," he said. "Thought maybe it would mean something to you now." "It does," I said, and I meant it. We stood together under the Christmas garland, watching the hotel glow, watching a place that almost died come back stronger than ever. Guests moved around us, creating memories they'd carry for years. The staff laughed in the background, and somewhere inside me, something settled in a way it never had before. I didn't feel whole because life became simple again, and the past didn't suddenly turn gentle either. What grounded me was realizing I no longer needed anyone's permission to belong. This space, this life, every bit of it was something I built with my own hands. And for once, that truth was steady enough to stand on. Christmas didn't mend the broken parts. Owning a hotel didn't erase the scars. Standing up to my family didn't rewrite history. But I learned something along the way. I wasn't broken in the first place. I just needed room to breathe, and I finally claimed it. As the night came to a close and the last guests drifted upstairs, I stepped out onto the terrace, breathing in the quiet Christmas air. I thought about the people who might be listening to my story someday, people who've carried their own hurts quietly, people who know what it feels like to be pushed aside by the people who should have loved them most. And for the first time, I knew what I wanted to say. If any part of my story feels familiar, tell me. Share your piece of it. I'll listen. And if you want to stay for whatever comes next in this strange, messy, beautiful life I'm building, stay close. There's more to come. Like, comment, and subscribe, not for the